was the beginning of June, and the air was thick with the scent of blooming wildflowers and warm soil. Emily, Jason, Sarah, and Luke, 4 childhood friends, had been planning this summer getaway for months. After graduating college, they wanted one last summer together before life took them in different directions. They booked an old lake house through an obscure rental site. The place was called the Hollow Retreat, tucked deep into the forests of Vermont, near an isolated, glassy body of water called Lake Hollow. The listing had only a few grainy pictures, but the price was low, and the thrill of isolation appealed to their sense of adventure. The drive was long. As they passed through the thickening woods, their phone signals died, leaving them disconnected from the world. The house greeted them like a shadowed whisper, tall, weather-worn wood, twisted ivy crawling up its walls, and a long front porch that creaked with each step. The lake shimmered behind it, deceptively calm, reflecting the blood-orange sky. Inside, the house felt too still. The air was dry and heavy, like it had been holding its breath for decades. Old furniture stood in corners like forgotten sentinels. There were no mirrors, and each room had thick, dark curtains nailed shut. Sarah joked, "This place is totally haunted," trying to lighten the mood. Jason laughed it off. "It's just old. We're going to have an epic summer." That night, they drank around a bonfire by the lake. Laughter filled the air until Luke spotted something. Across the lake on the other side was a figure, still, thin, and standing just beyond the tree line. "Is that a person?" Luke whispered, squinting. The figure didn't move. It looked like a shadow wrapped in mist. "It's probably a tree," Emily reasoned, though her voice trembled slightly. They went inside soon after, trying to dismiss it. But that night, things began to change. Emily woke up to scratching, not on the window, not on the floor, from inside her mattress. She stood up slowly, heart thudding. The scratching stopped. When she tore the sheets back, there was nothing. But when she touched the mattress, it was warm, as if something had just crawled out. Down the hallway, Jason's room had grown ice cold. He dreamt of the lake, of standing at the bottom, surrounded by hundreds of open eyes in the darkness, watching him. He woke up gasping for air. In Sarah's room, the closet door, though she had locked it, was slightly ajar. And Luke? He didn't wake up at all, because he never made it to his bed. The next morning, Emily was the first to wake. A sense of unease clung to her skin like sweat. She tiptoed down the creaky stairs and poured herself a glass of water, hoping daylight would erase the night's terror. But as she looked around the cabin's main room, something felt off. Luke wasn't there. His sleeping bag was rolled up, and his backpack was gone. At first, Emily thought he might be outside. Maybe he went for a swim. But when Jason and Sarah woke, they confirmed they hadn't seen him either. They checked the dock, the woods, even the small fishing boat tied near the reeds. The lake looked calm, but deep beneath its surface, something felt alive, like the water was watching them back. Jason found Luke's phone in the lounge, charging. He never went anywhere without it. Emily called out into the forest, her voice trembling. No answer, only the distant call of crows. They debated calling the police, but there was no cell signal. The landline was dead. Sarah tried the satellite radio that came with the cabin. It sparked once, then died, as if the battery had been drained. It had worked yesterday. Jason said maybe Luke had gone to town, though the nearest one was nearly 15 miles away and required crossing a barely there dirt road. They tried to stay calm. That night, silence spread across the house like a thick fog. No one mentioned the figure Luke had seen the night before. Emily couldn't sleep. The scratching returned, not from the mattress this time, but from beneath the floorboards. She followed the sound, barefoot, trembling, and it led her to the cellar door. The padlock that had sealed it since they arrived was broken, hanging loose, as though it had been unlocked from the inside. "Jason," she called out. Jason came groggy-eyed, then froze when he saw the lock. "No one touched it," he whispered. "Right?" Jason grabbed a flashlight and slowly descended into the basement. The air turned ice cold, and the light flickered with every step. The walls were lined with drawings, faded sketches of the lake, the house, and something dark crawling out of the water. At the center of the basement was an old wooden trunk, claw marks etched deep into its sides. Jason reached out to open it. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed from upstairs. Sarah screamed. Jason and Emily bolted up the stairs. Sarah was in the hallway pointing at her door. "Someone was inside," she shouted. "I heard breathing. Something was under my bed. And look." On the wall of her room, written in smeared, wet black ink, were the words, "Luke is not gone. He is beneath." And just beneath the message, scratched into the wood, was a handprint, small, wet, and trembling. It was still dripping. Jason stared at the message on Sarah's wall. "Luke is not gone. He is beneath." Emily touched the wet handprint. It was cold and slimy, like lake water, but it hadn't rained. Jason turned pale. "This isn't a prank, right?" "No," Sarah said, backing away. "I swear I locked the door. Something was inside the room." I heard whispering. No one spoke for a moment. The house creaked around them like it was breathing slowly, shifting its weight to watch them panic. Emily ran to the cellar. The drawings haunted her. The lake, the thing crawling out, and those deep black eyes scrawled again and again. The trunk at the center looked even older now, like it had been waiting, rotting, breathing. Sarah followed. She had found something in her room after the scream, an old folded photo tucked under her pillow. It was a picture of 4 people standing near the same lake house, dated July 1984. Behind them, in the far corner of the photo, stood a blurred figure in the water, half visible. "What the hell is this?" Sarah whispered. Jason examined it. "That's this place, but I don't recognize anyone. Look at the background, there's a second house." "There's no second house," Emily said, "not anywhere nearby." That night, the 3 stayed together in the living room. They didn't sleep. At around 2:13 a.m., Emily heard something. A faint dripping sound, like wet footsteps on old wood. Then, a thud upstairs, and another. Then a slow, creaking sound like a door being pushed open. Jason grabbed a fire poker. Sarah clutched a flashlight. They slowly crept up the staircase. The hallway stretched too long in the dark, like it didn't end. Emily pointed. The door to the attic was open. "It was locked before," Jason whispered. They ascended. Dust fell with every step. The air was heavier. Up in the attic, the moonlight cut through the slats in pale stripes. In the corner sat an old radio, whispering static, even though it had no power. And then it spoke, in Luke's voice. "I can see you. I'm under the lake. Don't come. It's too late." The static swallowed the words. Jason dropped the poker. Sarah stepped toward the window. "There's something on the lake." Outside, on the glassy surface of Lake Hollow, a shape had risen. It was standing, tall, thin, motionless in the moonlight. Same place as before, same shadowed silhouette. And this time, there were 2. They rushed down from the attic, their breaths short, adrenaline spiking. Sarah slammed the attic door shut and wedged a chair beneath the handle. Emily clutched the photo again. 2 figures now. What if they're not human? Jason locked the front door and pulled the curtains. "We're not going out there tonight. We wait till morning." But morning didn't come. Not normally, anyway. The clock ticked past 6 a.m., but outside it was still pitch black. Not a sliver of dawn, not a chirp of birds. Only silence and the sound of gentle ripples coming from the lake. Something was wrong with time. Emily checked her watch. It was frozen at 3:21 a.m. Sarah's phone showed no time at all, just a blank, black screen. Jason muttered, "This place is not on Earth." They heard a knock. 3 soft knocks on the back door, the one that faced the lake. They froze. Jason slowly approached, peeking through the gap between the boards. There was a face, Luke's face, pale, dripping, eyes wide as if drowned. He didn't blink. His mouth moved, but no sound came through the glass. Just a slow, unnatural movement like a fish gasping for air. "Open it," Sarah whispered, stepping forward. "No!" Emily hissed, pulling her back. "That's not him. Look at his eyes." Jason looked again. Luke's pupils were white, and beneath his fingernails was black silt, as if he'd been clawing his way out from the bottom of the lake. The figure twitched suddenly, like a broken puppet, and then smiled. An inhuman smile, far too wide as though someone else was wearing Luke's skin. Then it disappeared. No running, no footsteps, just gone. Sarah collapsed onto the couch. This is hell. We're in some twisted version of hell. Jason's hands were trembling. It's the lake. It has something to do with that lake. Emily nodded slowly. And that second house from the photo. Maybe it's still there. Jason pulled out the paper map that came with the cabin rental and unfolded it across the table. There, barely visible, was a faded mark labeled Waterbone Cabin, condemned in 1984. It sat just across the lake. Tomorrow, Jason whispered, we go there. But the lake had other plans. That night, while they slept in turns, Sarah woke to the sound of dripping, not from outside, from the ceiling above her bed. She looked up and saw a pair of open eyes embedded in the wood, staring back at her. They blinked, and then something whispered her name from inside the walls. Sarah didn't scream. She froze. The eyes in the ceiling blinked once more, then slowly faded into the wood, as if the house itself had absorbed them. She rushed to wake Jason and Emily. They were both pale, bags under their eyes. None of them had truly slept in days. We need to go, she whispered. Now, that second cabin, they called it Waterbone. Emily nodded, still holding the crumpled photo like a relic. Let's find it before the lake decides to keep us here too. They packed quickly. Flashlights, a flare gun, pocket knives, the old radio from the attic, and stepped out into a gray dawn that looked more like dusk. The air was wet and cold. Fog hovered inches above the water, hiding the other side. Jason untied the small rowboat from the dock. We'll go straight across. Emily hesitated. You really think Luke's gone? I think Luke's not what he used to be, Jason replied darkly. The lake was still, too still. As they paddled forward, the fog thickened. Behind them, the cabin disappeared entirely, swallowed by mist. Ahead, the shape of the Waterbone cabin began to rise like a memory, tilted, half-rotted, its roof partially caved in. They docked quietly. The trees here were strange, blackened, as if scorched from the inside out. A long wooden wind chime hung from one of the trees. It didn't move, no wind. The cabin door was ajar. Inside, it smelled like mold and metal. The floorboards were warped. The wallpaper peeled in strips, revealing symbols carved into the wood beneath, symbols that looked almost like eyes. Sarah's flashlight landed on a broken table where journals lay scattered. Emily picked one up. It belonged to Eleanor Wicks, a teenage girl from 1984. The lake is not a lake, it read. It watches, it chooses. Every summer it takes someone and gives them back, but not as they were. Another passage sent shivers down their spines. Father says I shouldn't look into the water at night. He says there's something that looks like me inside it. Yesterday I saw my own face staring back, but it smiled, and I wasn't smiling. Jason found a photo of a small boy with black eyes and gills on his neck, circled in red ink. On the back, taken after the drowning. It came back, but it wasn't him. Emily whispered, it's been happening for years. This lake, it makes copies, hollow versions. Then they heard something, footsteps upstairs. Jason raised the fire poker again, flashlight shaking in his hand. Sarah called out, Luke? A voice answered, it's so cold. I can't feel my hands. Help me. But it wasn't coming from upstairs. It was coming from beneath the floor. Jason pulled back a rug to reveal a trap door. Beneath it, a spiral staircase, descending into complete blackness. From below, they heard breathing, long, wet, gurgling breaths. Jason looked at them both. The spiral staircase creaked with each step, the wood damp and soft beneath their feet. The deeper they went, the colder the air became, like they were descending into the lungs of something ancient and alive. Jason's flashlight flickered. The walls changed as they went lower. Not wood, but stone, covered in carvings. More symbols, more eyes. They pulsed faintly in the light, like they were watching. Sarah whispered, this isn't part of the cabin. This is something much older. They reached the bottom. A single tunnel stretched forward, barely tall enough to stand. Water dripped from the ceiling, pooling around their ankles. The walls were slimy. The air smelled like rot and blood. As they moved forward, a distant sound echoed through the tunnel, sobbing. It was Luke's voice. "Help me! I'm cold!" Emily picked up the pace. "Luke! Luke, where are you?" Jason grabbed her wrist. "Wait." The sobbing stopped instantly. Then, laughter. Cold, hollow, echoing from every direction at once. The tunnel widened suddenly, opening into a vast underground chamber. At the center stood a stone platform surrounded by water. Something stood on the platform. It looked like Luke, but thinner, taller, and stretched. His skin was pale gray, his eyes all white. His jaw hung open far too wide. Black veins pulsed across his neck and chest like ink. He turned slowly toward them. "I'm still me. I just want to come home." Emily stepped forward. "Luke, if there's any part of you left, come here. We can leave this place, together." But Luke shook his head. "There's no leaving the hollow." Suddenly, the water around the platform bubbled. Shapes began to rise. Figures, dozens of them, crawling from the water. All of them had human forms, but none were truly human. Some had extra limbs. Others had no faces. One of them looked exactly like Sarah, but with eyes on the sides of her neck. Sarah gasped. It's copying us." Jason pulled the flare gun and aimed at the ceiling. "Back away now!" But Luke moved faster. In an instant, he screeched, a sound not made for human ears. It rattled the stone walls. The water surged forward in a wave, swallowing the chamber floor. They turned and ran. Behind them, the creatures gave chase, crawling, screeching, some dragging themselves along the walls like spiders. As they ran through the tunnel, the walls began to shift. The eyes blinked and closed, sealing off the path behind them. Jason shouted, "We're being buried alive!" Suddenly, a light appeared ahead. A door. Emily burst through first, tumbling out into the forest floor. Not the cabin, but outside, near the lake's edge. Jason and Sarah followed just before the door slammed shut behind them and vanished into the earth. The lake was still again, but something had changed, because in the rippling surface of the water, Emily saw her own face, smiling back at her. They collapsed near the water's edge, gasping for breath. The morning air was thick with fog, and the trees around them stood deathly still. Not even a bird called. Jason checked his watch. It was ticking again. 3:22 a.m. Only 1 minute had passed since they descended into the underground chamber. Sarah sat silently, eyes locked on the surface of the lake. It was calm, too calm, and that was worse than before. Emily walked to the water's edge and froze. Her reflection stared back, not following her movements. It stood perfectly still. The smile, wide, unnatural, never faded. Suddenly, the reflection raised its hand. Emily hadn't moved. She stumbled back, horrified. Jason pulled her away. "It's not you. It's something else. It's trying to cross over." Sarah stood beside them. "It's already started. The lake is replacing people, one by one." Emily whispered, "Then why are we still here?" Jason didn't answer, because they all felt it now. Something was off. Sarah's skin was wet, though she hadn't touched the water. Emily's voice echoed twice when she spoke. Jason's shadow split into two for a brief moment, just a flicker, and then it snapped back. Something was seeping into them. "We need to burn the cabin," Jason said. "The original one. There's something in that house keeping the hollow alive. We destroy it. Maybe we end this." They hurried back through the woods, reaching the original cabin by late morning, or what they thought was morning. The sun never rose. The sky remained a dull, graying canvas. Inside, everything had changed. The furniture was upside down. The windows were now painted shut from the inside. The photo of Eleanor Wicks was back on the table, but this time, she was smiling. In every version of the photo, even in the background. Sarah threw open the cellar. "We burn everything down. Every drawing, every trace." Jason and Emily poured oil from the generator closet across the walls and floors. The smell of gasoline filled the cabin. Emily stepped into her old room and screamed. On the bed lay another Emily, face rotting, skin bloated like a drowned corpse. Her eyes shot open and locked with Emily's. "You're not real," the thing rasped. "You're the copy. I'm the original. You don't belong here." Emily staggered backward. Jason ran in and dragged her away as the thing crawled across the wall like an insect. Sarah lit the match. Within seconds, flames roared through the cabin, licking the ceilings, tearing through the symbols. But the thing didn't burn. It screamed, not in pain, but in rage. And from the lake behind them came an answering scream. Dozens of them. The lake was waking up. The cabin burned like a funeral pyre, flames consuming everything. The journal pages, the attic, the cursed basement. Thick black smoke coiled into the gray sky like it was being sucked upward by something unseen. Jason, Emily, and Sarah ran from the collapsing structure, coughing, eyes wide with terror. Behind them, the fire screamed, not like timber snapping or air escaping, but like a voice. 100 voices howling from within the walls as they were devoured. The lake responded. It surged. A massive wave rose unnaturally from its center, twisting like a spine. The calm, mirror-like surface shattered, revealing a pit beneath. A swirling vortex, as if the hollow itself had been hiding a throat beneath the water all along. Sarah pointed. "It's pulling in the forest!" And it was. Trees began to bend unnaturally toward the lake, groaning as their roots were dragged across the earth. Birds scattered into the sky, only to vanish mid-flight. Jason grabbed the flare gun and aimed it toward the center of the vortex. He fired. The flare arced across the sky and stopped midair. Frozen, hanging, burning in place like time had paused. Then it reversed. The flare came back slowly, steadily, toward them. Jason tackled Sarah as it whizzed past and buried itself in the ground behind them. The lake was rewriting reality. Emily clutched her chest. "I saw something. When the house was burning, a room that wasn't real. A door, under the water." Jason stared at her. "What kind of door?" "It had markings. Like in the cellar, it wasn't made of wood. It looked like bone." Sarah whispered, "Maybe that's the origin, the true gate." Jason nodded. "We end this at the source. We go under." Emily's voice cracked. "What if we don't come back?" Jason met her eyes. "Then we make sure nothing follows us out." They found an old canoe at the edge of the tree line. The lake had shifted. It was wider now, deeper, pulsing like a living heart. As they paddled forward, everything grew silent. The forest stopped moving. Even the fog stopped swirling. Time itself seemed to watch. At the lake's center, something shimmered below the surface. Emily leaned over and saw a massive eye buried beneath the water. It blinked. Then the canoe shattered. The three were pulled under, spiraling down into freezing blackness. Shapes darted past them. Shadows, hands, faces they recognized. Their own faces. Just as Emily was about to lose consciousness, her feet hit stone. They weren't drowning. They were standing on a massive submerged platform. Before them stood the door of bone, twisting, breathing, covered in carvings of 1,000 eyes. A voice echoed through the waterless deep. "Knock and be remembered. Enter and be erased." Jason reached out his hand and knocked. Jason's knuckles met the bone door. The sound that followed wasn't a knock. It was a heartbeat, low, thunderous, echoing across the submerged chamber as if the lake itself had veins and Jason had just awakened its heart. The carvings on the door began to pulse, glowing faintly in shades of blue and gray. Each carved eye blinked open, one by one, until hundreds of them were watching the three of them. Emily clutched Sarah's hand. "If this is the door between our world and whatever this place is, we're not supposed to be here." The door opened inward. No creak, no sound. Just darkness beyond. A thick, living shadow that seemed to bend toward them. They stepped through. The air on the other side was dry and warm. The sky above was a flat red canvas with no sun, no moon. They stood on black sand, surrounded by broken fragments of houses, toys, picture frames, things from different times. A child's tricycle rusted next to a Victorian mirror. A modern TV, cracked and bleeding static, flickered beside a rotary phone. Emily whispered, "It's like a graveyard of stolen memories." They walked forward. The landscape shifted beneath their feet. Then ahead they saw a mirror wall, stretching endlessly in both directions. And in that mirror, they saw versions of themselves. But not just one, hundreds. Some of the reflections were crying. Others were screaming. One version of Jason was laughing maniacally, blood smeared across his shirt. One Sarah was missing half her face. One Emily had black eyes and gills. Sarah stared. These are all us, different copies. Jason took a step forward, and his reflection didn't follow. It stared at him, then stepped back. Then another reflection moved, and another. Suddenly the mirror shattered, and from its fragments crawled the doppelgangers, reflections given form, half-rotted, twitching, with jagged movements like broken mannequins. They charged. Jason grabbed Emily and Sarah and ran through the field of sand in memory. The doppelgangers gave chase, screeching. Every time one tripped, it bled ink. Their mouths opened wider than humanly possible. Their limbs bent backward. They mimicked the trio's voices, crying, "Don't leave us! We are you!" Just ahead a light shimmered. A well, glowing with white light, stood in the center of the nothingness. Around it were symbols identical to those back in the cabin. Emily realized, that's the source, that's the heart of the hollow. Jason didn't hesitate. He ran to the well, reached into his pocket, and pulled out the flare gun. "It started with fire," he said. "It ends with fire." He aimed the flare into the well. The doppelgangers screamed in unison, not in fear, but in fury. Jason pulled the trigger. The flare fell into the white light. There was silence. Then, a scream deeper than the earth. Everything around them began to collapse, the sky cracking open like glass, the sand falling upward, the doppelgangers melting into shadows. Emily shouted, "Grab onto something." They were pulled into the air, toward the ripping sky, toward the real world, if it still existed. The hollow was dying, or worse, awakening fully. They were weightless, suspended in the void, surrounded by fragments of their memories, dreams, and nightmares. The world they just escaped, if it could be called a world, was collapsing behind them. Jason screamed as the flare's white light swallowed the hollow's heart. Sarah clutched Emily's arm. "Hold on to something." But there was nothing left. No ground, no sky, only the pull. The three of them tumbled upward through a tunnel of swirling black water, past reflections of their own faces, some smiling, others crying, some rotten. The air was gone, their lungs burned, reality blurred. Then, splash. They hit the lake, cold, sharp, real. Gasping, coughing, they surfaced just a few feet from shore. The canoe was gone. The mist was gone. The lake was still. The forest was silent. It was over. Or so they thought. They dragged themselves onto the muddy bank. The burned remains of the cabin were still there, charred and cold. But something was different. The sky was blue. Birds chirped. The wind blew gently through the trees. Emily laughed, tears streaming down her face. "We made it! Oh my God, we made it back!" Jason hugged her. Sarah dropped to her knees and kissed the dirt. Then, from the trees, crunch, a footstep. They turned. A girl stood there, 13, maybe 14, pale skin, wet dress, long black hair hanging like curtains. Her hands dangled at her sides, lifeless. Emily froze. "Do you live around here?" The girl didn't speak. She just pointed to the lake, then walked into the trees, vanished. Jason frowned. That was the girl from Eleanor Wicks's journal, from 1984. Sarah's smile faded. "No one should still be here from 1984. Suddenly, Jason's hand twitched. He stared at it. His veins were turning dark, black, like ink. Emily looked at her own reflection in the lake. It blinked. She didn't. Sarah's shadow had two heads. A horrible truth dawned on them all at once. They had left the hollow, but it hadn't let go. The relief of escape vanished as quickly as it had come. Jason stumbled backward from the lake, clutching his wrist. The blackness in his veins was spreading slowly, creeping up his arm like smoke trapped beneath the skin. "Jason," Emily whispered. "It followed us." He fell to his knees, gasping. "I can feel it. Something's still inside me." Sarah turned in place, eyes scanning the forest. "We didn't close the hollow. We just broke it open." In the distance, the girl reappeared, the one from earlier. She was standing still among the trees, half concealed by shadow, her head slowly tilted. Jason stood with effort. "We need help. We need a hospital." Emily shook her head. "A hospital can't fix this." Then came the first real sign of what the hollow had done. Jason's voice began to layer, a second voice echoing slightly behind his, delayed by half a second, like a shadow speaking a heartbeat too late. Sarah stepped back. "It's mimicking you." "No," Jason said hoarsely, "it's trying to become me." Suddenly his reflection in the lake moved differently. It smiled as he grimaced. It raised its hand as he dropped his. Then it stepped out of the lake, dripping, smiling, Jason's double. Emily screamed as the doppelganger lunged. Jason tackled it, and the two crashed into the shallow water, thrashing violently. "You're not me," Jason yelled. "You're not—" The thing hissed, mouth opening wide enough to dislocate its jaw, revealing rows of teeth like fishhooks. Sarah grabbed a broken oar from the canoe wreckage and stabbed it through the creature's chest. It shrieked, dissolved into inky water, and vanished beneath the lake's surface. Jason lay gasping. Emily pulled him up, but she didn't have time to speak before she heard something behind her. A rustling. Another doppelganger, Sarah's this time, emerged from the tree line. It had hollow sockets instead of eyes and dragged its right foot like it had forgotten how to walk. The lake had copied all of them, and now the copies wanted to replace them. Emily shouted, "Run to the woods! The lake won't follow that far." They sprinted through the forest, branches slashing their faces, until they reached an old ranger outpost they'd passed on the first day, a rundown tower long abandoned. They climbed inside, barricading the trapdoor. Jason collapsed in a corner. "It's inside us, all of us." The hollow left a seed. Sarah stared at the glass window, where her reflection stood perfectly still, smiling. Inside the old ranger outpost, the world felt distant, almost like it wasn't theirs anymore. Wind howled outside, but the forest below was silent, not dead, just listening. Jason sat with his back against the wall, his breathing ragged. The dark lines under his skin had now spread to his neck. He shook with fever, sweat rolling down his face. Emily dabbed his forehead with a torn shirt. "You're changing." Jason gave a weak laugh. "Feels like I'm being rewritten from the inside." Sarah was at the window staring at the woods. "They're out there," she whispered. "Our copies. I saw one hiding behind a tree, just standing there, like it was waiting to see what we'll do." Emily sat beside her. "We have to burn it all down, not just the house, the lake." Sarah turned. "The lake is alive. It's not water, it's a mouth." Jason groaned, "And we've been inside it." They knew it now. Lake Hollow was a living entity, ancient, sentient, and the reflections, the voices, the twisted versions of themselves. It was all part of its survival mechanism. It didn't kill quickly. It replaced. Emily about that. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep, not because of the silence, but because of the whispers. From the mirror on the back wall, the outpost. At first, it was just wind, but then, "Sarah, Sarah, let me back in. You're not the real one." She turned. Her reflection was moving again, smiling at her, mouthing her name. And then, it stepped out of the mirror, cold, dripping, perfectly shaped, but wrong. Sarah backed away slowly. "Jason, Emily, wake up." The doppelganger cocked its head. "Why are you running from yourself?" Jason opened his eyes. His veins were glowing faintly now. "It's feeding off us." The fake Sarah lunged. Emily smashed the window glass and pulled Sarah through. Jason followed, limping. The tower shook as the creature let out an unnatural shriek, one that echoed not through their ears, but inside their skulls. The real Sarah gritted her teeth. "We burn the lake tonight," Emily shouted. "How? It's a whole lake." Jason stared at the flare gun, then at the old gas station they had passed miles up the trail on their first day. "It only takes one explosion," he said. "If we light the underground gas tanks and the hollow's watching through the lake, maybe fire will blind it." Sarah narrowed her eyes. Or piss it off enough to finally show itself. They ran. Back through the woods, and behind them, moving through the trees like silent shadows, their doubles followed. The woods whispered as they ran. Not with voices, but with breathing. The leaves stirred in unnatural patterns, curling and uncurling like lungs exhaling. Behind them, their doubles gave chase. Never rushing, never panting, just watching, always closing in. Jason stumbled but kept moving. His vision was blurring. The hollow seed was blooming inside him. I can't hold on much longer, he muttered. Emily grabbed his arm. We're almost there. The trail widened. Ahead, rusted metal signs emerged from the mist. Closed. Hollow Ridge Fuel Depot. The gas station. Dead for decades, pumps broken, weeds choking the parking lot. But the underground tanks were still there, sealed and pressurized. Sarah pried open a metal hatch behind the station and looked down into the dark tunnel leading to the fuel reserve vault. Jason handed her the flare gun. Get in, load it. When the doubles are close, light it up. Sarah looked at him. You're not coming? Jason's voice cracked. If I go near that vault, I won't stay me. I can feel it. Emily said nothing. She saw it too. Jason's pupils were fading to white. His shadow was splitting into three behind him. He was already halfway gone. They set up inside. Emily cracked open the old control panel. We can rig the release valve. When it vents the fumes, we light them. Sarah climbed into the vault chamber, stepping around broken pipes and oil drums. She held the flare gun tightly. Outside, the air turned cold. Then came the first sound, leaves crunching, wood cracking, and then laughter. Their copies stepped into the open. Sarah's double came first, mouth stretched unnaturally wide, eyes glassy, neck jerking side to side. Then Emily's, dragging a bloody dress and mouthing words without sound. Finally, Jason's double. It was fully formed now, taller, smiling. Its veins glowed with black light. The real Jason stepped forward, standing between the creatures and the vault. I know what you are, he said. The doppelgangers tilted their heads. Jason smiled. Let's burn together. He turned and ran at them, tackling his copy, wrestling it toward the gas-soaked pumps. Emily shouted, Now! Sarah! Now! Sarah fired the flare. A heartbeat of silence. Then, boom! The forest exploded in white-hot light. Fire tore through the trees. The shockwave collapsed the gas station. Flames erupted upward in a pillar that split the sky. The lake heard it. The hollow screamed, a deafening, otherworldly wail that echoed through every tree, every drop of water. In the creative, Sarah Storis contained it. The American Saul, Sarah, Argies, Inner Mothers, and El Murlers and Open Sir, Sarah and Gall. Sarah Flares, is the plier trees. Emily lay on the ground, dazed, ears ringing. Sarah crawled out of the wreckage, coughing, face burned. They looked up. Jason was gone. Smoke drifted through the treetops like black silk. The explosion had seared half the forest floor. Birds were gone. The air was sharp with the stench of ash and something sour, like burnt flesh mixed with rotting algae. Emily stumbled to her feet, skin singed, hair matted with soot. Jason, she whispered, eyes scanning the flames. But he was gone. No body, no sound, only silence, as if the forest itself was grieving. Sarah coughed violently, pressing a cloth over her mouth. We need to get to the lake. If it's hurt, maybe now's our chance to end it. Together they limped through the forest, firelight dancing on the bark, the trail warped by heat and falling ash. As they neared the lake, a strange sound rose through the trees, cracking, boiling, gurgling. When they broke through the final line of trees, their breath caught in their throats. Lake Hollow was no longer a lake. It had turned into a vortex of steam and churning black water, with thick tendrils rising from its center, not mist but limbs, veins, pulsing, stretching toward the sky like roots looking for a sky to strangle. And in the center, something was rising, a figure, tall, inhuman, made of shadow, bone, and water. Its head was faceless, but its surface was covered in eyes, hundreds of them, blinking at once. It let out a guttural hiss that echoed like distant thunder. Sarah fell to her knees. That's it. That's the Hollow's true form. The lake entity stepped onto the land. Where it walked, the grass turned black. The trees bent away. Emily whispered, "Then we finish this, right here." She reached into her backpack and pulled out the last flare. Jason had hidden a second one, a backup. Wrapped in his old bandana, a note attached. "In case you survive. Aim for its heart. You'll know where to look." Emily looked up. The creature loomed over the shore, a column of rotting flesh and water. Then it bent toward her, and in the center of its chest, a hollow cavity. Inside, Jason's face, eyes shut, mouth barely open, floating like a preserved memory. Emily's heart shattered, but her hand didn't tremble. She loaded the flare. The creature roared, a deep, rippling cry that warped the air. The earth shook. The sky above began to crack, like glass under pressure. Sarah screamed, "Do it!" Emily fired. The flare soared forward, straight into Jason's heart. A beat, then white fire. The creature shrieked louder than anything they'd heard. Its limbs convulsed. Its eyes blinked in agony. Black water spewed from its chest like venom. The trees burst into flame. The lake collapsed inward like a black hole. Sarah and Emily were thrown back by the blast. Then, darkness. When Emily opened her eyes, she was lying in the dirt. Sunlight,